Joining from all over the world for the International RAS webinar. So today that we're happy to have Xinhao Liu from the Rail Transportation and Engineering Center, Rail Tech Center at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign to give us a topic on the longer train operations and derailment risks. So Xinhao will bring the insights and analysis on the evidence on the rate, causes, and the effects of distributed power. Xinhao is currently also a third-year PhD student that's in the rail tech centers. He specializes in the railway safety and risk analysis. He has also served as data science fellow on the associations of American Railroad Policy and Economics team, where he develops automated data engineering pipelines to streamline the data analysis and generate, process, and support the team. So welcome to the International RAS webinar. Xinhao, the floor is yours.
Hey, thank you so much, Kelly, for your warm introduction. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. So it's my honor to present our latest research. The title is The Longer Train Operations in Derailment Risk, Empirical Evidence on Rates, Causes, and the Effect of this Report to here at the Informs RAS webinar 33. So again, Xinhao Liu here, and third-year PhD students at Realtech University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. Looking forward to this discussion today. So here it's my presentation outline. Okay. All right. So at the beginning, I'll start with the U.S. longer train operation backgrounds and the research motivation, following by the literature reviews and our research objectives why we're doing this. And then moving on to the body part, I have three main analyses. But before that, I want to introduce derailment and traffic data sources we used for the rate and cost analysis. And then the body part, firstly, we will look at the derailment rate analyses and then derailment cost analyses. And lastly, I'll also talk about the effect of this report on longer train operation. I'll conclude with conclusions and future research. So in the US, the freight train length usually can be measured by the average number of cars, or in other words, can be called by the number of wagons, and the rest of the world remains steady from 1960 to 2000, at about like 70 cars per train. Beginning in 2000, this train length began to increase, rising about 12% over the next 20 years. Moreover, the use of distributed power, or DP, also enabled the operations of trains as long as 14,000 feet. So in other words, the use of DP actually accelerated this process of adding more cars to the train. We know that there are many operational and economic benefits of operating longer trains, such as reduced operational costs and improved energy efficiency. They also have, however, they also have some operational and safety challenges. For example, operating longer trains may cause greater delays on single track corridors, potentially reducing network capacity. And assembling this longer train in the yard can also complicate operations and reduce terminal efficiency. Government Accountability Office and National Academy, they both suggested that longer trains may increase risks related to train handling, brake reliability, and possibly crew fatigue. So that said, the derailment risk, which encompasses the derailment rate and severity, the severity is usually measured by number of cars derailed per derailment, associated with train length need to be further analyzed and understood for operating longer trains. All right, and then speaking of derailments, there are many causes can lead to a derailment. And the derailment causes can be classified at multiple levels of aggregation. At the bottom level, which is the most finer grained classification level, we have the Federal Road Administration (FRA) train accident cause codes. So FRA, they classified all derailment causes into this 398 unique cause codes. On top of that, there's one also commonly used in academia. We call the AAR-ADL cause group methods, which they group these 398 FRA cause codes into 52 unique cause groups based on similar engineering failure mechanisms and prevention strategies in 1996. On top of this AAR-ADL cost groups, there are also one more layer of aggregation. We can classify them into major groups. And one commonly used classification method is to use this the major cost category. So all these groups can be classified into either a track-related, equipment-related, human factor, signal, and miscellaneous related. So this is the 5 major cost categories that are commonly used in the US. And on top of that, in addition to these 5 major cost categories, there's also one classification framework, which so-called the twin mile related and car mile related derailment cost classification framework. So if a derailment cost, its derailment risk, it's mainly driven by train operation exposure, in other words, twin miles, then this derailment cost is likely to be classified as a twin mile related derailment cost. On the other side, if a derailment cost, derailment risk is related to component or load cycle exposure, then it is more likely for it to be classified as a car mile related derailment cost. So let's dive into more details about these twin mile and car mile related cost groups. For twin mile related causes, again, those are causes whose accident opportunity is primarily proportional to the number of trains operated and distance they travel. So in other words, they're driven by the train operation exposure. For example, they may include failure to obey signals, grid crossing collisions, and switching rules. For car mile related causes, those are causes whose accident opportunity is primarily proportional to the number of cars moved and the distance they travel. So their derailment risk is mainly driven by the component or load cycle exposure of track and rolling stock. For example, they may include broken rails or welds, coupler defects, and broken wheels. Putting it in another way, car mile related causes may also refer to those fatigue related failures. In previous research, there has been researcher who had linked train length to the expected derailments through twin mile and car mile exposure. So Wang in 2019 proposed this theory, and he said the expected number of derailments can be calculated as the twin mile derailment rate multiplied with the twin miles plus the car mile related rate multiplied with the car miles. So in this slide, on the left-hand side, we have this chart, gives you the expected number of derailments for a single train with twin length difference. Right? So on the x-axis, we have twin length, and the longer the train, will have a higher twin mile related derailment rate, whereas the car mile will have a higher car mile related derailment rate, whereas the twin mile related derailment rates remain constant. Since we're only operating one train, the twin mile is constant. And then the second chart here gives you the expected number of derailments for a fixed volume of traffic. So if we operate longer trains, then it will reduce the amount of twin miles we need to travel. So the twin mile related derailments will decrease. And since the total amount of cars we need to move from A to B is constant, then these car mile related derailments will stay the same. So as you saw in this chart. So Wang really established this exposure-based framework for twin mile and car mile related derailment risk estimation in 2019. However, there's a very strong and key assumption in his theory. That is, the twin mile and car mile related derailment rates are treated as the average rates primarily determined by the traffic exposure. In other words, the train length detailed within each exposure group, train type, or any of the the segment level grade and curvature, none of that had been explicitly modeled or discussed in his theory. So one also acknowledged that a possible upper limit where very long trains may increase the derailment probability, but this effect is not directly estimated in his model, largely due to limited explorer data by train length and train type. So in this study, we wanted to address these gaps. Again, so previous studies have not directly estimated derailment rates by train length, largely due to limited explorer data by train length interval train type, and railroad. This study, then we wanted to examine how derailment rates varies with train length, and specifically we want to answer these four questions. Firstly, what is the overall relationship between derailment rate and train length? Secondly, what is the relationship between derailment rate and the train length for the three US principal train types, namely unit trains, manifest trains, and intermodal trains? And are there any particular causes associated with longer train derailment rate? And lastly, does this report reduce derailment rates for longer trains? All right. So before I move on to the real analysis, the results, it is important for us to understand our data sources, namely the derailment and traffic data sources, which are essential for our to do the derailment rate analysis. So firstly, the derailment data. The US DOT Federal Railroad Administration or FRA data, it permits the calculation of number of derailments by train length and number of rail cars. So in this chart, on the x-axis, we have train length measured by the number of cars, and on the y-axis, we have the number of derailments. And our study sample or population is class one railroad only, and we only focused on mainline and setting train derailments. So we are not interested in any other accident types. We're only looking at derailments. And then our study period is between 2018 to 2025. So looking at this distribution, right, the derailment distribution, the median value is really between 110 cars to 120 cars with a median value. All right, so derailment data is only a part of the story. In order to calculate or analyze the accident or derailment rate, there is another important part of the data source, which is the traffic data. So in the past, a detailed traffic explorer data, no matter is in train mile or car mile, by train length, by train type, has not been previously available for any of the previous researchers. But we have been fortunate enough that have the access to the detailed traffic explorer data, and this is how it has been collected and how it has been analyzed within the group. So data on train operations by train length. The traffic data that were collected using the train 2 system that records the railcar movement events reported to RailLink, which is a subsidiary of Association of American Railroads. In the train 2 system, we have these movement events, and they are triggered when rail cars and trains pass these automatic equipment identification or AEI readers. So on this slide, on the top picture, you can see this is the AEI tag on one side of the rail car. So there are, in theory, two AEI tags on a rail car and one on each side for US rail cars. And then once this car or this AEI tag passes through this bottom picture, the wayside AEI detector, then there will be a signal basically sent to the rail links to the train 2 system saying that this car or this equipment passed through this location at this timestamp. So we will have this car level observation or car level event observations. And then within the group, we have the algorithm that aggregate these car level events into train level observations. And our definition is that whenever a set of rail cars are reported together more than once at different locations, then they will be defined as a unique train. We can do so for all the trains or for all car level observations in a network, and then we can group trains for the entire network. And not only that, we're able to know what is the first observation of this train. So in other words, we will know the origin, and we will also know the destination, and also the intermediate stops that this train traversed in the network. So with all this trajectory information, we were able to estimate the train mile and car mile traffic information by train length and train types. So this is the rough idea of how we're gathering our traffic data. This slide shows you the similar distribution, but now I'm showing you the traffic distribution by train length and again for our 8 years of study period. So this train mile distribution, it's a bimodal distribution. It has two peak value, which peaks around 40 cars and 100 cars roughly. And in the introductory slides, I mentioned that we are not only interested in studying the relationship between derailment rate and trend length, we're also interested in breaking them by different trend types. We want to see the trend type effect. So in the US, there are three principal North American freight train types. They are namely unit trains, manifest trains, and intermodal trains. Unit trains, the definition is that the trains consisting of similar rail cars carrying a single commodity, typically moving from one origin to one destination. And in our traffic data, we had roughly 25.5% of all the trains are unit trains. And then secondly, for manifest trains, they're defined as trains carrying different commodities, um, uh, by contrast with unit trains, in different types of rail cars, and usually serving multiple origins and destinations. In our traffic data, unit trains consist of the largest proportion. It consists roughly 58% of all trains. The third type is intermodal trains, which is a special type of unit train carrying intermodal containers or trailers, and typically on flat cars or wheel cars. It consists 16.8% of all trains in the traffic data. Okay, so now next slide. This slide shows you the same train mile distribution. By now, we're breaking them by not only train length, but also by train type. On the left top corner, you see the same distribution as you saw 2 slides ago. That's the all train types combined traffic distribution. But here we have them break them down by unit, manifest, and intermodal. So this is quite clear, right? The intermodal trains are concentrated among trains with fewer cars compared with unit and manifest trains. Then this raises to a question, is that whether intermodal trains are really shorter than unit trains or manifest trains. So then I'm going to introduce this idea that measuring train length by number of cars sometimes can be misleading. The wide range in freight car length means that the linear length of a train can vary widely depending on the type of rail cars in the consist. And for example, I have two extreme cases here. Compare this 24 feet old car with this 291 articulated 5-unit rail car, which are common in intermodal trains. Both of these two will be counted as a single car in either traffic data source or the derailment data source, but their linear length or their actual length can differ more than 10 times. So then instead of using the number of cars as the proxy for train length, we can then try to use the linear length or feet as the proxy for train length. So now I'm showing you the same traffic train mile distribution by train length, but now it is measured by feet instead of number of cars and train types for this 8 years. Then there are still some differences among the train type distributions, but they're much less compared to what you saw 2 slides ago, that the train length is measured by number of cars. Right. Right. And then this is the traffic by train miles. And then next slide shows you the traffic in car miles. So these distributions are similar, but it has a little bit different differences between the car mile the train mile distribution. All right, and then recall previously I mentioned that we're going to separate our derailments into train mile and car mile related derailments. So next slide shows you the distribution of the train mile related derailments by train length and train type. So starting from here, again, our train length are always measured by feet instead of number of cars. So by looking at this distribution, right, the intermodal trains, they have the fewest number of derailments, followed by unit trains. Manifest trains tend to have the largest number of derailments. And this phenomenon may due to the lower rate. In other words, intermodal trains may have a lower derailment rate, but it is also due to the less traffic. As we saw, only we have 17.7% of the trains were intermodal trains. So we will analyze this in more detail in the next sections. Similarly, this slide shows the car mile related derailments by train length and train type. Again, intermodal trains having the fewest derailments, followed by unit train. All right, so now we have enough background for our traffic and derailment data. Now let's really move on to the results section. The first part will be the derailment rate analysis. To remind everyone, again, in this study, we have two types of derailment rate metrics. The first one is the true mile related derailment rate, which is calculated by a number of true mile related derailments divided by a million true miles. And the second one is car mile related derailment rate. Then that's number of car mile related derailments divided by a million car miles. So the most straightforward way to learn about the derailment rate is to calculate their empirical rates, right? Basically, we have the number of derailments, and we also know the traffic volume. So we can simply calculate their empirical rate. So this is how it looks like. In this chart, we have two lines. The blue line shows you the true mile related derailment rate, and its y-axis it's on the left-hand side. And the orange line shows you the car mile related derailment rates. Its y-axis it's on the right-hand side. So two trends we can observe here for true mile related derailment rates. We do see a positive correlation or association between trend length and its rate. Whereas for car mile related derailment rates, we didn't really see a very significant association between or positive association between their trend length and the car mile related derailment rate. Again, we can break them down by trend types. This chart shows you the trend mile related derailment rates by trend length and trend type, and the clear association remains, right? The manufacturing, however, being the one has the highest derailment rates compared to unit and intermodal, but there is a positive relationship between trend length and derailment rates for all trend types, especially for the manufacturings. For unit trains, it has generally higher rate than intermodal trains when trains are below 11,000 feet long. However, for trains getting longer and longer, again, as you saw previously, we have fewer number of unit train derailments and also less volume of unit train traffic for longer train length. So that's why we see this fluctuated long unit train derailment rate. But for intermodal trains, its longer train derailment rate generally increased compared to its lower train derailment rate. But still, on average, unit trains remains the second highest derailment rate compared to intermodal trains. Similarly, this chart shows you the car mile related derailment rate by trend length and train time. So not surprisingly, right, as we saw in the overall chart, no relationship between train length and derailment rates for all train types were observed. But generally, universally speaking, manufacturing still have the largest derailment rate, then followed by unit and intermodal trains. So these are all the empirical results. We're going to build some statistical models to quantitatively evaluate the train length effect, the train type effect, and also since we have 8 years, we're also going to study the year effect. So a Poisson regression was used to model the derailment counts for both train mile exposure and car mile related derailments. But this one shows you the setup for the train mile related derailment rate. So in this equation, we have the train length effect, train type effect, interactions between train length and type, and lastly, we have the year effect. So for a train type effect, unit trains as the baseline as the reference group. The 2018 is the reference year for year effect. All right, the modeling result is also not surprising. Both train length and the train type effect shows a significant relationship. And with the interaction term considered, this is how we interpret them. The train length effect, they differs by train type. This is exactly contributed by the interaction terms. For unit trains, each additional 1,000 feet increase is associated with about 9% higher train mile related derailment rate. For manufacturings, each additional 1,000 feet is associated with about 21% higher train mile related derailment rate. And for intermodal trains, it is 25% higher. Again, this is not suggesting that intermodal trains are having a higher derailment rates compared to manifest and unit. This is only giving us the rate of the increasing, the rate of the increasing. So it's not absolute derailment rate. As we saw previously, it's really manifest trains having the highest rate. And then the year effect, right? The year 2020 has a significantly higher train mile related derailment rate than the baseline year 2018, and it is roughly 45% higher. But for other years, they are not statistically significant. I also fit a negative binomial model uh, to do the sensitivity check, and both Poisson and negative binomial model give very similar results. And so I stick with Poisson regression here in this study. Similarly, we can fit the same model or similar model for Carmyle-related derailment rates. And in the previous slide, we saw that there's possible and no significant relationship between trend length. Then I didn't have the injection term here. I only have the length effect and trend type effect and the year effect. That's it. The model result is also not surprising. Trend length is not significantly associated with trend mile related derailment rate. The p-value is really large, it's 0.8, which suggests that the trend mile related derailment rate per car mile, the car mile related derailment rates per car mile, it's approximately constant across trend length. However, we do see this trend type effect. Manufacturings have about 60% higher car mile related derailment rates than unit trains, and intermodal trains on the other side have about 51% lower car mile related derailment rates than unit trains. The year effect, car mile related derailment rates in 2024 and 2025 are significantly lower than in 2018 by 34% and 37% respectively. If we want to visualize these two statistical models, this is how we can do that. So this chart shows you the predicted train mile related derailment rates by train length and train type. So universally, manufacturers having a higher derailment rate than unit and manifest. And generally, unit trains are having a slightly higher derailment rates than intermodal trains. But intermodal trains start to have a higher rate at very long intermodal trains. And again, it is largely due to we're lacking of the statistical power are on longer train intervals for unit trains and intermodal trains. And one other thing, it's the shaded area along each line gives you the 95% interval. So as you can also see, once trains get longer and longer, we have larger and larger confidence interval bands, saying that we have less traffic and derailment data, yielding us smaller statistical power. All right. Similarly, this chart gives you the predicted car mile related derailment rate by train length and train type. So not surprisingly, right, the train length is not really in fact affecting the car mile related derailment rate. However, we do see the significance among different train types, manufacturers being the highest, followed by unit, and intermodal stay the lowest. Okay, so in this part, we analyzed the derailment rate by train length and train type, and we split it into car mile and train miles. So we learned that there is a positive association between train length and the train mile related derailment rates. But it is more important to know why, right? Why it is the trend as it is right now, and what is really behind this positive association. And then this leads to our second part of this presentation, which is we're going to dive into these causes, and we're going to do this derailment cause analysis to see what are the causes that are contributing to this longer train derailments. So as I mentioned previously, the derailments can be classified into 5 major cause categories, namely equipment, human factor, track, miscellaneous, and signal. This slide shows you the train length, again, in feet on the x-axis and on the y-axis. For each train length group, we have the percentage of different categories of derailments showed here. So equipment and human factors, right, this orange and blue bar, cause derailments are the principal categories for derailments of longer trains. And this is especially true for human factors. The proportion of human factors started to increase once train lengths exceeded, like say, 8,000 feet. Whereas for equipment, the proportions remain relatively steady once train length exceeded 4,000 feet. So we can then dive into this human factor cause category and then plot the detailed cause groups within this human factor cause category and do the similar chart. So this one gives you on the y-axis the percentages of the human factor caused derailments by train length. And otherwise, we can see at shorter train length, the human factor caused derailments are mainly switching rules or use of switches or switch related. However, as train lengths get longer and longer, we do see a larger proportion of train handling and brake operation. So these are the two major cost groups for longer train derailments. And again, it is straightforward to calculate the empirical derailment rates of train handling and brake operation. So this is how we can do that. In this chart, the blue lines gives you the empirical derailment rates by train length. Again, but this one is all train types combined of all human factor cost derailment rate. The red line below gives you the train handling derailment rate, and the orange line gives the brake operation. And on the bottom, we have the all other human factor cost groups. So from this chart, we can also observe this significant relationship between train length and for brake operation and train handling cost derailments. Similar to what I did previously, which we constructed the statistical models for to evaluate the train length effect and train types effect when we're considering train type related derailments and car type related derailments in general. We can do the same thing, but break them down by different cost groups. So here I did this cost group level screening for the train length effects. So similarly, we use Poisson regression, and we fitted for each AR and ADL cost group separately. So in theory, we should have 52 regressions and 52 hypothesis testings. So for here, since we're all breaking them down by cost group, so we don't have that many data points. So I didn't include train type or year effect. I'm only interested in this train length effect here. And the normalizer, the explorer, can be either train mile or car mile, depending on whether this cost group is a train mile related or car mile related cost group. And again, since we're doing many hypothesis testing at one time, then the p-values we used to reject null needs to be adjusted for this multiple testing. Have been using the Benjamini, Patchberg, FDR, and Helm correction. And the results are not surprising. There are in total 3 train mile related cost groups shows a significant and positive train length effect, and brake operation and train handling being the two of them. These two actually also have a surprisingly similar, and the strongest effects. Both of them shows an about 33% increase in their derailment rates per additional 1,000 feet increase in train length under the train mile normalization. The p-value is really small. There's also one other train mile related cost group, which is extreme weather. So the extreme weather includes, say, for example, strong wind, floodings. They're all classified into extreme weather. The derailment rate of extreme weather also increases with train length, but the effect is smaller. It's actually about a 16% higher rate per additional 1,000 feet under train mile normalization. I also conducted a sensitivity check. So here, the brake operation and train mile are normalized using train miles, and I actually used car mile for normalization for all these three, and then do the sensitivity analysis, and the results is consistent, right? The brake operation train handling remains significant, even though the car mile is used for their traffic exposure. However, the extreme weather became non-significant. All right, then this slide shows you how much how much the proportion of the longer train derailments are contributed by this brake operation and train handling. So in this chart, we have the black line. It's the same line or same empirical rate line you saw previously. It's the all train mile related derailments, and on the bottom red line gives you the derailment rate that's brake operation and train handling cost derailments were removed. All right, so this gives you the sense that really the most of the longer train derailments are contributed by the train handling and brake operations. So we know about this fact, right? The brake operation and train handling were the contributor factors for longer train derailments. And this chart gives you the temporal trend for these two groups and these two groups combined. So in our 8 years of study period, the train handling and brake operation derailment rates, they peaked from 2020 to 2022, but have generally declined since. So that said, the railroads have been applying mitigation strategies to reduce the risk caused by train handling and brake operation. All right, this concludes our second part of the study. The third part, which I'm going to talk about the effect of distributed power on longer train operation. This will also link to our just learned train handling and brake operation related derailments. So distributed power trains, or in other words, DP trains, they have their locomotives distributed along the train. So they have this radio controlled distributed power units on the same train, or aka helpers or robot units, and these extra units can be placed in mid train, at end of the train, or even both locations, as you can see from the right-hand side pictures. The use of DP in freight trains in the US has expanded substantially over the past 25 years, and uh, major Western railroads are operating more than half of their trains with DP, and this is even an article from 2010. So 16 years later, there are more and more railroads and trains start to use DP in their operation. There are many advantages of using DP in longer trains. For example, they can reduce drawbar forces, and they will also enable longer train operations by a single crew. They are proven to be more fuel efficient, and most importantly, it improves the control of in-train forces through better initiation of train brake and train line air recharge and reduce the brake propagation time. So this last bullet point, right, if we think about it, it's really related to those brake operation and train handling related derailments that we saw previously in the second section, where they contribute to longer train operations. So in theory, right, the deployment of DP should, to some extent, mitigate this train handling and brake operation risks. But in the past, again, due to the lack of detailed train explorer data by train length, train type, and DP status, no research has done any empirical or quantitative evaluation of the effect of DP on this train handling brake operation related derailment rates. So we're fortunate enough to collaborate with one of the class ones in the US, and we were able to obtain their both traffic and derailment data for between 2014 to 2023 for us to use to evaluate the effect of DP on train handling, brake operation, and we add one additional cost group here, which is car coupler defects derailment rates. So car coupler defects, it is also a cost group that is related to train handling. And for this specific railroad company, the car coupler defects also shows a positive and significant relationship with train length. So that's why we decided to include car coupler defects as additional group here, also increase more data points to increase our statistical power. So we fitted a similar model, and then we controlled for train type, train length, and this time we also have additional variables, DP status. And the chart shows here is that the DP trains have a significantly lower predicted derailment rates after controlling for train length and train type, no matter whether we want to include intermodal trains or not. And this mitigation effect became more pronounced for longer trains as well. All right, that's all I have for the main content. So in conclusion, in this study, mainline and setting derailment rates for US Class 1 freight trains from 2018 to 2025 were analyzed. Derailments were modeled separately for train mile related and car mile related causes, while controlling for train type and train length. The results shows that the train mile related derailment rates shows a significant positive train length effect, where train mile related derailment rates do not show a significant train length effect. For train type effect, manufactured trains have significantly higher derailment rates than unit and intermodal trains, while intermodal trains have the lowest overall rates. However, intermodal trains show the fastest increase in train mile related derailment rate with train length. Then within these train mile related causes, train handling, brake operation, and extreme weather show significant positive associations with train length. And lastly, distributed power is associated with significantly lower train handling and brake operation derailment rates, suggesting a potential mitigation effect for longer train operations. In the future. So today, the derailment rate model you saw, it's really again an aggregative rate model. So in the future, we plan to construct a track segment level derailment rate model, which we um, wanted to develop a derailment rate model at segment level to incorporate the route specific factors such as grade, curvature, elevation, and traffic mixture. And today we really didn't touch on the second part of the risk analysis, which is the severity, usually measured by number of cars derailed. So in the future, we will also extend the current framework from derailment rate to derailment risk by incorporating both derailment frequency and severity, allowing comparisons across train length, train type, route characteristics, and operating strategies. And lastly, once we have the risk model constructed, we can use the model to evaluate the safety and economic trade-offs of operating longer trains versus shorter trains under fixed traffic volumes on specific corridors and networks. So do the cost-benefit analysis. All right, so that's all I have for today. I would like to sincerely thank the following individuals for their guidance, support, and valuable contributions to this research. They are Professor Chris Parkman from RATEC, Professor Chen Youling from National Yangming University, and Dr. Rapik Zat, originally from AAR, but now is affiliated with CN, and then Professor Taylor Dick. Now it's the professor at UT Austin in the Texas Railway Analysis and Innovation Node. All right, that's really all I have today, and I'll give the floor back to the audience. Any questions, comments are welcome.
Wonderful. Thanks, Xinhao, that for these interesting presentations. So, let's see if there are any questions from the audience. Can be either that one type in the chat or just turn the audio. Clark.
Oh, hi, Kelly. Thank you. Hi, Xiaohao. Very good presentation, very good information here. So one of the major contributing factor to derailment is train handling. So again, behind train handling issue, that's really the weight distribution. When you have a lot of heavy cars at the rear end, so when you're trying to brake, that's really the heavy car kind of squeeze the cars in front of it, causing derailment. Okay, so I would say in the future direction, one of the things you could look at is really the trim makeup. So how the weight distributed, where the empty cars, where are these heavy cars, especially one type of car called the EOCC, end of car cushioning. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So that's really the culprit of a lot of derailment. So I would suggest you to look into that. Again, the data may be an issue. I'm not sure how granular the data is, so whether you can really see what type of cars in the trim makeup. So that's one comment. Another one is really when you're talking about the effect of year, you see there's a significant reduction of derailment in year 2024, 2025. I guess one of the reasons is that there was a big derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. That was early 2023. So right after that derailment, every Class 1 railroad implement very strict marshaling rules. For example, where you put the EOCC cars, how do you distribute the weight? Okay, so that maybe was behind the significant drop in derailment in 2024, 2025. That's just a couple of comments. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much. And those are absolutely valuable. And we are aware that the flow of today's presentation is really I want to show the overall rate and I want to discover what is behind the rate. And yes, we revealed that it's contributed by train handling and brake operation, but really that's also not the end, right? Just like you said, it's behind the train handling is really the train makeups and where you place your empty cars, where you place your loaded cars. And this is also one of the reasons behind why manifest trainings tend to have a higher derailment rates than unit and intermodals, right? So the manufacturers, they are generally have a mixed loading conditions. They have either like 50% loaded cars, 50% empty. But for unit and intermodal trains, those two type of trains tend to be either fully loaded or fully empty. So in other words, their train makeup strategies are simpler and is less possible for you to make some mistakes. So for manufactured trains, if you especially for those empty cars. If you place your empty cars in a position that can contribute to probably like a higher likelihood of excessive above force, or dropped force, something like that, then it is more likely to get involved in derailment. And we actually saw that the loaded cars are having a higher derailment rate or involved rate than empty cars in other analyses. But yes, those are really great observations, and thank you very much for the input.
Wonderful. We also have a question from the chat from Shara and the associations. So did you look into any probable reasons for peaking the derailment in 2021?
Yeah, so this will go into like we need to look at the derailments one by one and then to see like why it really happened. We didn't do a very detailed analysis of studying like why the value peaked at 2021. Since now the data we have in hands are mainly the traffic data, like the operational data and the derailment data, and that's it. We didn't have like say if we want to know like the marshaling makeup or like the policies behind the operations that we didn't have enough information. But one thing we can do is to dig into the year of 2021, right? And then look at those derailments and see what really happened. But we haven't done that. So
Thanks, Xinhao. I have actually some quick questions. So it is interesting to see that extreme weather do have
Mhm.
impacts, but the p-value is too large. So basically means that it's not statistically significant. So I wonder if I have more elaborations on this part because I was um, imagining that the data may have crossed because it's crossed 8 years, so it may have a various of the temperatures or the weather on that. Do you also look into like some specific locations, or is more as a general like big pictures of how it would like?
Yeah. Um, we haven't really studied extreme weathers from this study, but I do know among our in our audience, one of our the co-worker, the co-author of this presentation, Chen Yu, I think he actually had some articles specifically touched on the extreme weather, were thoroughly studied the extreme weather uh derailments in the US, but I haven't personally looked into it. And then yes, as you alluded, the statistical significance for extreme weather related derailments, it is significant for true mile related, but if we switch them to car mile, it is not significant. And even though for true mile it is significant, but it's not as strong as strong as the association is not as strong as the train handling and brake operation. But yeah, it's yet to be studied. But that's also one of the interesting observations, even though for me as well, when I look at the result. So
Yeah, indeed. Well, in Canada, we have many extreme weathers, a lot of snowstorms, etc. So it also
yeah,
be interesting to see how this going to impact on that. Um, so I see Sharma that I have another question that is DB use considered with train handling or with air brake?
dynamic brake. Dynamic brake. Well, I think dynamic brake is a subcost code within the brake operation. So I mentioned about the AR/ADL group, the cost grouping methods. And then they actually grouped multiple Alpha cost codes within each group. So the break operation in train handling, I'm really referring to the AR, ADL group methods. So within each group, I do believe the dynamic break is a sub-cause code below the break operation. So it is considered as the break operation cause group, if that's your question. Or if you are wondering whether dynamic break is making an impact on the derailment rate, then that has not been studied. Yeah. If that want to be studied, I mean, we need to do a similar analysis as what we did with the DP.
Yeah, that's also one of the considerations. I also think so. I do also see another picture. I think it's on page 31.
31?
Yeah, so it is also interesting to see that I think the variations and the uncertainties that at the two end, especially in the manifest trains, is
Right.
much longer, is much more than in the middle side. So it means that if we're more looking at a safety perspective, a medium range of train length is better than either short or either too long. So do you have more of the insights or like some of the what's your thought and any comments or advice on that?
I think this is mainly due to we have fewer number of derailments for manufacturers at two ends. This one is car mile related. I think I do have a breakdown by car mile chart in the appendices. Uh, yeah, so this is the car mile related derailments by trillions and feet. So we're talking about in manifest. So we do see we have a fewer number of derailments at two ends contributing to that larger confidence interval. Um, and then I want to say it is this picture, the presentation I gave today, it's not the full picture yet. Um, I didn't consider all the possible, well, it is impossible to consider all possible factors, but I didn't consider all the plant factors that could contribute to derailment rate yet. At the very beginning, I mentioned the not explicit model in one's theory. I talked about train type, I've talked about train length, but the segment level information has not been included in the model yet. For example, the grade and curvature, the track, the speed, like that for a track class, all that information were still out of the model. So that's what I'm planning to do for the track setback segment level German rate model to include all these additional variables into it. And then we can make some conclusions whether to what extent operating longer trains or operating shorter trains is more benefit than longer trains or vice versa. So yeah, I think I wanted to be more conservative of making this whether longer trains or shorter trains are safer than the other. There's still some variables I can include but have not included in the model. This is still only a part of the picture. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, that's fair enough. And I think a variety of the factors that can result in this one, like from the data perspective or from
right, right,
operational perspective.
right. Yeah. Again, there could be many potential factors affecting this, and it is impossible for us to include all of them, but there's still some we can include using different modeling perspective, modeling approaches. Um, that's something I want to do in the future. So
Wonderful. Um, any other questions from the audience? So we have one from Frank.
chemical issues, manufacturing, limits of different car types, empty, surprisingly enough. Right. Yep. That's a great comment. Echoing what with Clark mentioned. Yes, where you play your empty cars in the train definitely make a difference. In train handling, train makeup, in train handling, in train forces, the train dynamics. Especially if you have some terrain, interacting with your trim makeup, then yeah, they're definitely important.
Yeah, balance of like empty cars or solid blocks of loaded cars, etc.
Right.
Perfect. I think we are good to conclude this seminar today. And thanks again, Xinhao, for giving us a very interesting and informative presentations. And happy to see everyone next time.
Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you for your invitation today.